Hi, everybody. Welcome to AI is Coming for Wealth Management. Are you ready to rise? My name is Stacy Coffey. I'm head of partnership success here at Rise Growth Partners, and I am joined with both Joe Duran and Jack Morgan to have this discussion around AI and how we should be kind of dipping our toe into that AI world if we haven't already within the RIA space. We actually think about AI in wealth management with a pretty simple analogy that a lot of you know from the restaurant world, which is what's front of the house and what's back of the house. Front of the house is everything that's client facing. Back of the house is the platform, the leadership, the systems that make it all work. And I think today we're really going to focus on the front of the house and really how AI can help advisors better and deepen their relationships with clients across the prospecting, onboarding, as well as client relationship phases as they deal with their clients, and how we might be able to start thinking about AI if we haven't already really integrated it into our RIA system and our day-to-day practices. So as I mentioned, I'm joined by Joe and Jack, and I'd love, Joe, for you to kick us off with a brief intro and then also talk to us a little bit about why now for AI and why are we using this front of the house, back of the house analogy?
Well, thank you, Stacy, for having us. Our goal here is really to educate, enlighten, and hopefully empower the people who listen in. As you know, I've been in the industry for quite some time, over 30 years, and I've really tried to be on the front end of what's happening in the industry. We built one of the first TAMPs in the country. It's now called Asset Mark. Uh, Sold that to General Electric, then built United Capital, one of the first national RIAs. And obviously sold that to Goldman Sachs and was a partner there for several years. And now we've launched Rise, which is a minority investor in what I view to be the next generation of wealth management firms. And it's impossible to think about the future and not think about AI. That's the topic of today. We're going to talk generally today about the entire industry. Our leader in the AI world is Jack and Brian alongside him. And we spend a lot of time thinking about this. And as you mentioned, it's really important to think about the front of the house separately from the back of the house. Really, the back of the house is everything that allows you to meet with clients. And the front of the house is everything that happens when you're actually meeting with clients. So we're going to concentrate today on the front of the house. There's such amazing things happening. And Stacey, to just highlight one thing you've said, this is not I think everyone now knows this is not a fad, but the speed of adoption will be much greater than it was with the internet, much greater than it was with the cloud. Adoption speeds now are warp speed. And so you really do need to get involved. At least, hopefully, this will be helpful in framing where there's some low hanging fruit. We hope you leave with some tangible things you can do right now, and then maybe some more sophisticated things as we do more of these updates and talk specifically about each area of the client journey, and talk about the kinds of tools available in future episodes that you can explore and use. But right now, it's really an orientation meeting about everything about technology and how to think about it.
Thanks, Joe. I just want to remind our audience, or this might be a good time to throw this out there. If you have any questions, please email those into us, or throw them in the chat, I should say. We should be able to answer a few of those questions towards the end of this webinar. And as Joe mentioned, we want to share some really practical examples around how AI is being used now. And if you haven't used it before, maybe where to start. Jack, I would love to hear from your perspective. What is one thing that's really making you feel like AI is absolutely crucial at this point? There's just no ignoring that we are going to have this incorporated into our day-to-day lives if it's not already.
Yeah, I mean, I think the inevitability, of AI, is definitely upon us, as Joe had mentioned. Like, this is the moment that we should be here because like we should have started, 5 years ago. And if you haven't, now's the time. But it's kind of crazy if we think back over the past 12 months of where AI was, right? Like we were joking around that AI couldn't count the number of R's and strawberries last summer. And we look at how far it's just springboarded in the past 6 to 12 months. And I think, there was kind of this novelty moment that we kind of went through where AI showed up in all these different apps like ChatGPT, Claude, and they're showing up on phones, right? And so it didn't seem maybe as so serious. And then they got closer and they got into desktop. And then beyond that, what's really happened over the last 6 months is we started to see direct integration into the apps that advisors are using every single day, whether that be things like Outlook, whether that be things like note takers, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But I think this moment of inevitability really came up in the past probably 9 months or so, where we're starting to see the amount of capital funding that's going into these different solutions. And more than anything, the technologies are now showing up inside of the platforms that we're using every day. And so I think that's the moment that we realize that, if you're not getting in with AI now, it's kind of the equivalent of having a flip phone. Like this is the moment to make the transition into the next wave of technology.
Yeah, I love that analogy. But that being said, I also loved my old flip phone. So I'm not sure which world I should be in right now. But that's part of the reason I really like this slide that we're looking at right now around the AI enabled advisor, because we're seeing AI touch everything front of the house from start to finish before we even know our clients. So I know, Joe, you've seen a lot of different RIAs utilizing AI in different ways in the prospecting space. And I don't want to start just strictly on a negative note, but I think people are a little bit afraid of this. What are some of the primary or larger mistakes that you've seen advisors use when it comes to AI and prospecting?
Well, when you think about the client journey, there's really three overall phases. There's the period of which they're strangers. You've got to identify them, find them, and try to make them into friends. Then they come in and you try to take them from being a friend to being a client. And then, of course, once they're a client, you want to make them raging advocates. And AI can play a role in all of that. The starting point really is thinking how you think about AI. And almost with any innovation, you end up with at least half the universe in denial that it's even going to come. And then, most importantly, usually saying it's not going to have any impact at all. And it's kind of like when the advisors went from commissions to fees, the advisors that were in commissions, but this was back in the 90s, would say, well, why would I make that change? It's not good for me. It's not good for clients. I'm making more money as it is. And overwhelmingly, that transition occurred till it became really not a choice. Same thing happened when we went to the internet. Same thing happened, of course, with cloud computing. And the way you need to think about AI, even if you do nothing, all the systems and tools you use will transition to AI assistance anyway. That's the good news, that the table stakes, even if you do nothing, it's inconceivable that your existing software will exist the way it does. And if you are not aware of AI, then you're going to be at a disadvantage to all the firms that are going to be using it. And we're going to just go through the three phases. And the upfront phase right now, and I just did this prior to getting on this call, you can go on AI, type in a person's name, find out who they are, and actually ask the simple question, can you create a one-page client summary for me? And I just did it. I just typed into ChatGPT, Joe Duran, living in Laguna, CIO of Rise Growth Partners. And with that, it gave me a full summary of me, an estimated age range, my marital status, which I got correct, married, 3 children, college and high school ages, gave my primary residence, had a vacation property. This was incorrect, said it was in Aspen. I don't have that. And it gave some background about my current position, past position, my reputation, a full financial snapshot. It was off. I don't want to share it, but close enough for government work. Liquidity event potential, assets, liabilities. It got my liabilities correct, just some mortgages, and what I'm interested in. And then, most importantly, it gave a list of goals and priorities, key considerations, and how to engage with me, what things to talk about. That's the $20 a month version of GPT. If you go into deep research, which is included it's in Chat GPT, you can go to the side GPTs, which might be more sophisticated. It will give you an even more in-depth and perfectly accurate with exactly how to talk to me. So it'll read my articles, not just my LinkedIn profiles, public books that I've written, interviews I've done, and while it might take longer, will actually tell you specifically, Joe needs to speak in direct terms. Please don't, he's very financially, I'll give you the term it used when I did deep research. It literally said, Joe is highly financially literate, avoid financial pitches, focus on unique insights, exclusive access, and advanced tax legacy solutions, and then goes into more details about how to actually talk with me, basically giving you a psychographic profile. Now, That gives me, if I'm competing against an advisor who does none of this work and is doing all the discovery, a huge advantage. It means I'm shortening the trust cycle without being intrusive because it's just taking LinkedIn, my social presence, articles written about me, which there might be none about your clients, but public records. And there's so much available, even for not as visible people, that you'd be almost handicapping yourself if you don't do that simple thing. So that's one simple thing you can do. It's more accurate if you go to a group like, let's say, Perplexity or Claude, which tend to be less evasive. And we'll talk about the different ones. But the biggest mistakes I see, not using it, not even knowing how to use it. And then, really important here, a lot of the information is wrong. And so the mistake a lot of people make with AI is they assume that it's accurate. And in fact, I have found it to be, again, my own anecdotal. I'd say it's right 70% of the time, but the 30% can be really, really wrong. And so you want to use the information to validate, inform, and it's genuinely accurate, but not down to the details. So when you're prospecting, that's useful. Second example of where you can use it. You can go right onto almost any version of AI, including LinkedIn has a built-in version that looks for triggering events. Just sold a company, just raised capital, just got divorced, any kind of triggering event that might cause people to want a financial advisor so that you know who to speak to, who to reach out to, and you can have AI even write it for you. What's the right message to send with an example of your firm's communication so it's done in your tone. So again, you can do all kinds of really sophisticated things in the upfront to make sure that you're taking advantage of what's available right now at a de minimis cost.
Yeah, and Joe, I mean, the amount of information that came back just in your quick search is amazing and mostly right. Can you remind us what the simple prompt was that you put in to get that?
I literally went to ChatGPT and here's three things you need to do. Number one, be specific with the question. Joe Duran, Laguna Beach, and if you've got a job title, that's very helpful because otherwise it'll with app, especially ChatGPT, which is the most wants to be the most pleasing of all the AIs, it will tell you absolutely the outset. Jack, I see you laughing because it will just tell you that even if it's not true. So you want to make sure you get the right person. And then you want to, the second, in what form do you want the feedback? And this is really important. I'm a wealth manager and I want to find out about this person so I can deliver advice. Who is the persona they are responding to? Even if it's just you as a regular person, it's very helpful to have very clear what you want. And then third, what information do you want? And so again, who do you want the information about? Two, how do you want the information delivered? And third, in what form do you want it? And I always like checklists. I'd like a checklist, please, of their information and what I should do. And I would say of all of the different technologies, the AIs available, I do think GPT does the nicest job presenting it. Although unfortunately, Perplexity is the most accurate. But again, if you want the deep drill version, it'll take a little longer. Just have deep research within AI, do the actual work, and then have AI draft the checklist for you. And you can do this, by the way, you can build your own GPT, which Jack will share in a sec, to actually do this for all your advisors. So prior to a meeting, it automatically, they just do the name and they get a standardized format so that they know how to cover things and go through the checklist. Hey, this is how you make an intro. Share some of the information, validate that it's accurate, those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I'll jump in there, Joe. I think like you hit the nail on the head that at the end of the day, we should all think of AI and these different tools effectively like an intern. Like they don't have the context to understand what we're trying to ask them. And so I think, we've come up with a model at Rise, or that I would say, borrowed, called the Rise framework that's out there. And hopefully we can bring that up here in a second. But it's exactly that. It's exactly thinking about the prompting, which is what's the role that you're really trying to enable here? Is it the wealth manager? Is it a client service associate? What's the intent of what you're trying to accomplish? Like, let's be very clear on what we're trying to get it to do. And then, Joe, to your point, like, what's the structure of the format? And even give it an example. What does good look like on the output? And so I think, going back to this conversation on the prospecting area and the prospecting aspects, it's really important that one, we're incredibly clear with AI when we're using these tools and technologies, but more than anything, we should be going after use cases that we're already doing today. I think a lot of firms are going after like, what's this cool new snazzy thing that I can do? And the reality is you should be going after those lower hanging fruit opportunities like prospecting, right? Like the common concept of just sales spider webbing and understanding like the different connections that you have with an individual. To your point, Joe, like use deep research to get an edge, like accelerate that time to go from hours where it's sitting with a CSA or doing it yourself and as an advisor, and bring that back to do it within minutes by running through the deep research aspect. So there's so many different things that we could go through here today. And I don't want to hold up the conversation specifically on prospecting, but I think by using a framework like this with engines like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, etc., that's how you're going to get the best out of them is assume that they are interns, give them as much context as possible, and make sure that you're very clear in what you're looking to get back out of the system.
And again, while you're doing this, Jack, I couldn't agree more. I think when you first start using AI, which I've been quite entrenched with for a bit now, you overestimate its intelligence and its intuitiveness.
Yep.
And we as humans tend to give subtle cues. We are seeing an intern, we know that person doesn't know anything, and therefore we provide context. We are specific, we're more detail oriented. When you're
Right.
dealing with AI, and by the way, I never type anything into AI. I always talk into it, and it does, even with my ridiculous accent, a remarkably good job. But even if you type, it's okay if it has typos because it kind of infers, it knows where you're going.
Yeah.
But because it speaks, especially ChatGPT, with such certainty, it gives you a level of confidence that is fake. And I'll give you a funny example of this, Stacy. I actually just I've never done a fantasy league before. And a group of my friends here were like, hey, let's go do one. And I joined. And I thought, well, I'm just going to use ChatGPT. And I was taking pictures of everyone's drafts and telling Chat, who should I pick next? And again, even though I know I should know more, I should have said, I'm in a fantasy league, da da da. Please take into account XYZ. It gave me the worst choices in the world. I didn't know enough to know that one guy was injured. Justin Tucker was in suspension for the next 10 weeks, and I picked him as my kicker. However, had I been on Perplexity instead, I actually realized halfway through, I'm like, these don't look like good picks. And then Perplexity was far better with, I don't know, I need more information than AI, which as little information as you give, it will give you an answer absolutely with certainty. and and say it with total conviction, by the way. So I think understanding the difference between the coding intent of all of these languages is important because their fundamental coding is quite different. So, but these four pillars are really good frameworks for you. And I think Jack, you'd agree, where most people fail is in that first one.
Yes.
Defining who's asking and for what purpose is really important because we assume that's like obvious, but it's not that obvious.
No, it's critical. You're 100% correct. And as you had mentioned, right, like when we're talking to individuals, like we pick up on body language, we pick up on cues, we know who we're talking to. Those things don't exist when we're interacting with these different AIs and these different technologies. And so we have to be incredibly explicit of like, I'm managing a fantasy team. This is what I'm looking for. So these types of things do
And
not
I'm an idiot.
happen.
I don't know who plays, so take into account everything.
Right, right.
Did you tell Chat that you actually wanted to win the game? Is my question.
I
Or
guess I should
win
have.
week? Yeah.
I mean, the bad thing is if I lose, I have to actually have dinner for 12 people and their spouses and wear a Speedo, which
Wow.
heaven help, I'd be wearing an apron the whole night, I guess.
Oh my
Hey,
gosh.
I can't.
number two. I think the next step on the discovery and first meeting, Stacy, I think having a one-page summary before the meeting that describes what they're doing. And by the way, it's very, very useful to actually have a clear view of what is it that this person wants and what are they likely to care about. For example, they're an entrepreneur. They've got 3 kids, Joe Duran. What are they likely to care about? Because it's going to give you context for that first meeting to actually know what are the things that they're going to want to talk about and how should I outreach. And when they come in, validate the things that matter the most so that you can actually, and by the way, have AI sitting in and recording the meeting so that it takes away the vital aspects of the meeting so that you leave with a clear set of priorities. And you can even be prompted by AI on what questions you should be asking to make sure that you get to what you want to at the end, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a time in the industry where, and I think it still is to an extent, where like the next best action was pivotal as part of the journey. If you wanted to walk away from every conversation and know what is the next thing that I should be doing. And I think the benefit of starting to use AI, whether those be note takers integrated into your CRM, note takers just in conversations, putting in client notes coming out of your systems, or even taking pictures from the notes and the conversations that you're having and putting them into some kind of AI interface, it's going to give you that edge and it's going to give recommendations. And I think, Joe, to your point, like you talked earlier about like making custom GPTs, right? And I think that's something that for a lot of people, it's scary. It sounds like we're getting into this new area. I have no idea what's going on. Like that's what OpenAI does. That's what Gemini does. What am I doing? But the reality is that's where kind of this concept of personas come into play, right? And so when we think about a persona, it's really just telling ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever your, AI choice is, who are you trying to kind of channel? Like who do you want to show up as? Do you want to show up as an advisor? Do you want this to be written as a marketing team, et cetera, and so on? But in an instance like what Joe you're talking about, of this one-page summary, you just use the persona to effectively say, hey, I want to create a GPT that can create a repeatable one-page summary every single time. It can do deep research, it can find the connection point, it's going to do the spider webbing. And more than anything, it's going to come back to what are the motivations for Joe Duran? So coming into that meeting, you don't just have to script this every single time per se. You just go in and say, run this specific GPT for Joe Duran, run this specific GPT for Stacy Coffey, and it's going to take care of the rest for you. And
It
so
can do,
those
and it
are,
can do even more than that, Stacy. Jack did this for me with the articles that I write for CityWire. It took me hours and hours to write every one, and I have a very formulaic process. So we uploaded all my articles, and now it literally walks me through a set of 4 questions, which I answer and talk about, recording them. And as I record my responses, it literally creates a draft article for me in minutes. It takes about, I have to have bullet points of what I want to talk about. I do the interview for about 30 minutes, and I end up with a 1,000-word article that looks exactly like every article I've written. And then I spend my time editing and refining because I want to make sure it's in my voice, but it's so remarkably close that it's alarming. And it has insights based on the way I've written for the last several years. And I think we uploaded just 10 articles, but it had my books and everything else. So now I have a GPT that's Joe's column, and I'm able to do it. One of our partner firms actually created a Joe GPT based on all of my interviews that I've done. And when they have a discussion to have with me, they'll ask Joe, the GPT Joe, how should we deal with this bad news we want to share? And it will tell them specifically, be human first, joke around, give the facts as they are unfiltered, come up with a solution, and then lighten the mood. And literally, they finished sharing some stuff, and I'm like, God, you guys are so good at this. They're like, well, we asked Joe. So you can actually, if it's a client coming in, you can actually see the connective tissue with your existing clients and say, I'm sure you know this, but here's the common thread that we have, and even your own background with those clients. So it can bring up common threads if that's the thing that you want to have a connective tissue to right out of the gate. And as Jack said, you can build that into any of the, especially ChatGPT, your own GPT that basically works so that all of your team approach things the same way. So when you put in your client information, it's going to come in the same format. The follow-up for the first meeting will be in the same format. And it's so much easier than ever imagined. Now, again, it's going to be wrong about 25% of the time. So you want to make sure you filter out and process for accuracy.
Yeah, we very fondly behind the scenes call that the Joe bot with that particular client, and the Joe bot attends a lot of meetings, I will tell you. But it's very helpful. It's very, very helpful. I'll also tell you that the framework that Jack put up earlier, the RISE framework, really defining that role that you want the ChatGPT to play. Jack shared that with me a few months ago, and it has changed the way that I interact with ChatGPT. It's made me much, much better, more thoughtful. I think our team talks a lot about how we want this to be something that enhances the way we do our jobs, not replaces the way that we do our jobs. And that framework really helps to establish that really systematic way to approach it in order to get the answers and to get the content that you're really looking for. You guys both gave great examples around that turning strangers into friends and the prospecting very front end of the relationship. How about when we go from converting those friends into clients?
Well,
Jack, can you talk?
let's talk about
Yeah,
like the discovery and first
yeah,
meeting and the pitch and
yeah.
proposal, like that section of it. First of all, include AI and let them know you're including AI. Like, don't hide it in the shadows. I remember when we first started doing financial planning, it was remarkable how much resistance we had from our own advisors bringing up Money Guide or e-money and doing the planning in front of them because the advisors are like, we're charging so much. They need to like think that we're in the back in the engine room processing. And I'd like, bring them into the cockpit because they have no desire to be behind the wheel. And that is the same with AI. I would encourage you to actually let them know we use AI. It's dumb technology in many ways, but it's remarkably useful in taking notes, summarizing follow up, and increasing our productivity and speed to response because we'll get some solutions. It doesn't know what the right answer is, but it can help a lot in providing alternatives that come up instantaneously. And that's good for you and good for me. So letting it know, letting your client know, we're going to have AI taking notes along with my assistant because we want to catch everything. It also stores things for future reference. And it also summarizes so that before you leave, we're going to print out the summary notes. They won't have been reviewed by me yet, but at least you'll know some of the things we covered. Or it might even live there allow you to look at alternatives for tax saving strategies if that's of a concern. But again, don't hide from it. Your clients will actually appreciate that you are on the cutting edge. And again, don't overstate it because it's not smart technology. It's why you're required in the discussion. So there's nothing wrong with checking in with having AI in that first meeting, but then you're able to get prompt questions that AI might think of, that your assistant might follow along, that might be useful questions for you to ask, even if you're on your cell phone being prompted. And it's suggesting questions you might want to think about because we're all humans. And I think of this like as Jack said, somebody who's observing and coming up with ideas that some of them should be ignored and some of them should actually be listened to.
Yeah, Jack, maybe you can give us a concrete or tangible example that you've seen one of our clients use or one that you've seen in the industry that really helps to bridge that prospecting into the onboarding phase. And how is AI making things easier, but also still personalized? Because I think a lot of people worry about losing that personalized touch because they're incorporating AI into their process. And I think we found it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's really a good question. I think like there's been a big fear historically of AI. I think what would one of our webinars be without statistics, right? So kind of channeling my inner Terry here. Last year, 21% of advisors were afraid of AI taking their jobs, and that's down to 8% this year. And so I think people are starting to see like one, maybe part of it's, hey, maybe this technology isn't so scary, but I think more than anything, they're starting to see the benefit and the value. And so to your question, Stacy, when we think about the front of house specifically and this center kind of lane that we're in right now of converting, friends into clients, it's really around accelerating that relationship and using AI to accelerate that relationship, not replace it. And AI has a completely different use case, which we'll talk about in future webinars in the back of house. And that's where we're focused on orchestration and automation and saving time. But in terms of concrete example, I mean, just think of every time a client's onboarded, and this is something that we're seeing happen live with firms that we talk to, of the amount of form filling software that's still being used, right? I have to fill out, 10 different PDFs. They have to go to the custodians. They have to go into, e-money. They have to go into all these different systems and platforms. And now what we're starting to see is the ability to just effectively fill out one simple PDF one time and have it automatically update every system that's needed. And it sounds like such a simple, mundane exercise, right? But the reality is that it's something that companies are investing in. Like companies are investing by hiring more people And in an industry that's so client-centric and client-forward, we should be bringing on talent that can help us retain those customers and those relationships, not so we can handle more people, right? Like we should really focus on using technology to amplify our human intelligence, not replace it. And I think that's a big thing that we're starting to see more and more of, which is really exciting. So form filling is a huge thing, like I had mentioned. Overall document ingestion is another huge dimension that we spend a lot of time talking to different companies that are out there that are trying to be specialists and being able to handle that problem for firms and making it as quick as possible so that their CSAs and their advisors can get back to what matters, which is what talking to clients about their onboarding journey, what matters to them, and what their motivations are.
And Stacy, I'd add, to go back to your question, it absolutely creates a high level of personalization because it frees up time for humans to be humans. I've always said technology will never replace humans when it comes to money because humans want someone to blame when things go wrong. And that's true with legal, it's true with tax prep. You want an accountant if you get audited, you want a lawyer if you get sued, you want a doctor if you get really ill. There are two things that it will always cause there to be value with financial advice. The first is if there's high levels of complexity, because people don't know how to deal with complexity. And as soon as people have enough net worth, have stock options in their plan, don't know how things are going to work, complex issues that don't know how they're going to be resolved, you need a human to help you have a disciplined process for decision making. And then the third is that there's a lot to lose. If the consequences of being wrong are really high, well, you need a professional. So those are the two pillars that I've always said technology doesn't replace the ability to deal with complex situations and the ability to deal with complex outcomes that are life-changing if they come the wrong way. And in that instance, what technology and AI allows you to do is deal with many more nuanced outcomes in a much quicker way, in a much more specific to this client way, where you could literally put in the situation with me and my three daughters and ask the question, what could go wrong? What's most likely to go wrong with Joe, a 57-year-old CIO from Zimbabwe who knows everything about me, married to a woman for 32 years? What's most likely to go wrong? And identify all the things in order that people in my situation will likely face. And that allows me as an advisor to do the job better. Imagine if I gave the client in that first meeting a list of things to consider that would be the highest likelihood potential outcomes. Whether it's, hey, you highest likelihood of getting skin cancer, highest likelihood of having an affair, whatever that might be. And it's not happening, by the way. I've been happily married for 32 years, but having that list of things that could go wrong, even if I don't share it with a client, is really useful. Even if what's likely to be on this person's mind right now, even things like that. And I think it's unfortunately I've always been a huge believer in behavioral economics. I think this takes behavioral economics to places that are unimaginable in a real, totally personal way because of AI and gives incredible power to clients. But again, you've got to build the systems to know what to ask. And what you're seeing is a lot of GPTs that are actually just skins on top of the underlying technology for very specific use cases. And that's where one of the things that I know Jack and our team do spend a lot of time with our partners is what use case do we need to solve for and create different GPTs, much like you do in Salesforce, specific reports for specific measurements. Well, AI is very much like that.
Thanks, Joe. That makes perfect sense. I was actually going right into how do we use this to deepen relationships that we already have? And you gave some great examples there. Anything to add on that front, Jack, as we have these clients for a long term and we already know them, how is AI actually going to help us if we already know these clients inside and out?
Yeah, 100. I mean, a couple months ago, we were talking to one of our firms talking about, client experience and what does that journey look like. And there was kind of this eye-opening moment that we realized like the amount of effort that is going into keeping up with the simple things like birthdays, anniversaries, college plans, like all these little events that, they add up dramatically over time. And when we start to scale that from, 30, 50, 100 clients, it gets unruly and out of control very quickly. And then again, you hit this kind of moment where you're like, well, do I hire another CSA to help with this or not? And so that is such a phenomenal example of something that you're doing today. It's a safe place that we don't have to worry about PII compliance and things like that, where we can kind of integrate AI into that system and have it automatically give us updates weekly, like who has birthday coming up this week, what's going on with college for Joe's kids, so on and so forth. So these are really good spaces to start. They're very safe for firms, and not only are they very safe for firms, but it's happening right now. It's not like we're giving these examples and these are kind of these theoretical situations. Firms are actually doing this and they're seeing great benefit in it. When you power that by adding something like a Zox or a Jumper, one of these note taker platforms, it just amplifies the amount of intelligence and your ability to walk into the next conversation and be more confident than ever when you're running an annual review, you're looking at investment plans and things like that as you're thinking about the future for your client.
I mean, think about if you every week had a report of what major milestones do any of my clients have coming up. And it literally said, so and so is having an anniversary. These three people have their grandkids' birthdays. This one's kid is going to graduate college. And you were able to send notes, which you didn't even have to do because AI can do it in your voice. And all you have to do is review it and hit send. And you could even have an agent do the sending. But once it's reviewed and it's stored for your compliance records, I mean, the level that you could do. And the second biggest issue is education at scale. Like you could literally say what articles would be relevant for who. And as long as you have enough data to know who your clients are, which is very easy to do, even if you don't have it today, get it by asking AI to find it. And then finding articles for your entrepreneurs that were of interest this week that you can send and say, hey, I just read this article. I thought you'd enjoy it. And have it in the copy of the email so that it's automatically done in a way that is appropriate for you. The level of ongoing curation that can happen compared to the hours that you spend mass blasting emails to 1,000 people, having a really personalized content feed is really interesting. And if you have an app, having content that's very curated specifically for that person and where they are in their lives and appropriate for a wealth management firm.
That's great. I want to get to a couple closing questions, but I know we wanted to take one or two questions from the audience, and you both touched on something around safety and what's safe to use in our space and what's not. So I'd love to get both of your thoughts on, from a compliance perspective, which I know is a little more back of the house, but from a compliance perspective, what are we using? What's the best thing to use? Is it ChatGPT? I mean, Jack, you've referred to ChatGPT as the gateway drug to all of AI a number of times. When is it safe to use this, and what guardrails do we need to be thinking about as we incorporate this into our practices?
Yeah, I mean, listen, number one, the biggest rule of anyone using AI these days, especially within a firm, is you have to be on a paid model. Like no free models, like you need to make an investment, a small investment nonetheless. But the reality is at the end of the day that if you're not paying for your AI, whether that be ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Grok, like doesn't matter what you're using, that data is being used to train models and you are putting your clients at risk. So that's number one. The second
Yeah,
thing is from a compliance
just to
point of
put a
view.
double click on that.
Sure.
If you're paying for the paid version, especially a corporate version, your information stays within your walls. If you're not, that information is accessible to anybody who could literally go in and say, tell me about Jack Morgan's clients, and it would tell me what I made available about your clients. So you really do need to ring fence. That's a super important.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the other part of that, Stacy, kind of the flip of that coin is from a, even if you're using a safe environment, a safe space where your data is walled off from everyone else, which is the goal, we still want to make sure that from a compliance point of view, we're not putting things at risk when we're thinking about PII. And so the other piece is like start with easier things like persona-driven market copy, like coming up with the Netflix kind of experience of education that Joe was talking about. Like go to safe spaces where you can give context about your business, about what you offer and how you're going to deliver it. But you can do it in a way that you're not saying, this is Joe, his social security number and his information. So start with safe things where you're not opening up PII to these models because again, it's pretty new. We don't know what things are going to look like in 2 to 3 years. And the best way to kind of start is to be judicious and protect your clients.
That's great input, and the last thing we want is to put any of our clients' information out there in an unsafe space. So it's always nice to reinforce that. The other piece is when we talk
By the
about
way,
AI. Yeah,
Stacy, there are different note takers, and several of them now that are specialized in the financial services industry and store those notes. in an appropriate way, sensitive to compliance stuff. Because obviously you have live conversations. Sometimes things can be misconstrued, and you don't want documenting things that don't represent fairly accurately the conversation that occurred. So you want to be, there are specialized note takers for the wealth management industry that are very judicious about what it stores in the documentation and the conversation. And
Yeah,
Jack, I
that's
know
a
you've got a couple
really
of
good
your
point.
favorites.
Yeah, I mean the three big ones that we see like being used and being used really well are Jump, Zox, and Zeppelin. Those are the three that are all safe, that all do their monitoring, their logging correctly, and they're the three leaders in the space by far.
That's funny. That's exactly where I was just going to go is sometimes we use the terms AI and ChatGPT synonymously. There's so much more out there. So what else should we be considering beyond ChatGPT right now?
Joe, I'm gonna let you start with that one, see what
Well,
you think
look,
of
I
that.
use if it's actually an analytical question, I prefer by far Perplexity or Claude. Both of them tend to be very data heavy. So if there's analysis, if you're using it for portfolio management, sophisticated financial planning, you're far better off with one of those. Again, they're all playing catch up. I also don't like being humored and pandered to quite as much, which chat does a lot. But you'll feel like the smartest and most charming person in the world if you use ChatGPT. But I find, again, it sacrifices accuracy for pandering. And so again, I'm not an advocate for any. I just think that they have use cases where they're very complementary. So I like the combination of Perplexity and ChatGPT a lot. I think on the creative side and the wording and messaging side, ChatGPT is far better than Perplexity, and has GPTs for design. And I'll just give a quick tip because a lot of people, I can't believe how many people find this and don't know this. But if you just go to ChatGPT and go to the hamburger on the side, it stores all your past questions. But you can also go to this GPTs. And within GPTs, there's GPTs for literally everything. And if you're not sure how to find that, literally ask the question, which GPT should I use to design a PowerPoint presentation? And it will tell you all the ones you can use. And they're testing the agent, which is basically a skin on top of the ChatGPT to basically be an assistant to the AI. And again, everything we're learning now, we probably won't need to know in another few months because it's all adapting so quickly. But I'd say, get comfortable with the fact that GPT is kind of a general practitioner. And within GPT, there are specialists in different areas, writing copy, design, analysis, research, and go to the more specialized functionality. You can keep those certain ones active, by the way. So I keep deep research always on in ChatGPT, but you can choose what's right for your business and its specific function. But you can literally say, which GPT should I use if I want to write an article, blah, blah, blah. And it
Yeah,
will
Right.
and I'll
Anything
guide
take
you.
you
it.
want to add to that, Jack?
I was gonna say, yeah, I'll take a different spin to that and say, like, outside of the ecosystem of the GPT kind of realm and the AI realm, that the conversational elements that we're talking about, if we expand beyond there as a firm, right, and we kind of have this zone for note takers, there are also some really great platforms out there that are focused on like asset management and intelligent asset management. And so there's so much research that we could share, and we'll cover this in future webinars. I know we're kind of about at time here. But I think, the note taker realm is definitely an interesting one. Thinking about how AI shows up within your CRM is another huge one. We also know that the portfolio management providers that are out there are making huge investments into AI within their platforms to get deeper intelligence and analytics on the clients within systems. So it's an ever-changing environment for sure, but I would 100% say, like, go do some research on this. There are so many different verticals that exist within your firm, from a front office or a back office, that can benefit from these different technologies that are available.
Great, great. We are about at time, as you just mentioned. So we're going to close out with one just rapid fire round here. Joe, Jack, if there's only one thing that an RIA leader is going to do in the next 90 days with artificial intelligence, what action should it be? I'll start with you, Joe.
Every day, use it for something, just in your own personal use. Where should I go to dinner? What should I tell my daughter? What do I tell my wife? Just use it every day. Just get on and use it because your firm will not use it if you don't use it. So I would just start by saying every single day, go into your preferred vehicle and ask it a question that you would normally Google and see how it responds and try to interact. Because what will happen over the course of a week is you'll become addicted. You'll start using it for more. And once you start to think about how it works, it is a different thing. It's not quite an intern. It's digital. It's just start training your muscle on how to interact with it.
Great. And Jack, how about you? Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to pile on and piggyback on Joe's, but I'll pick something different. My recommendation, this is a low risk, no risk situation, is set up an AI committee at your company. Like it can be 2 people, 3 people, it can be you and one other advisor, but just have a conversation and just talk about like, what do we think this could even do for us? Do a little bit of research, set up some guardrails. And I just think that there's so much case study management that can happen across the board, but you can just start talking about some of the challenges that you're running into, where's time being spent, the basics, that some use cases will come to light very quickly. And hey, if you have this conversation in the first 90 days and you feel like you don't go anywhere with it, then drop it. It's no harm, no foul. But I think on top of what Joe said, start an AI committee, have a conversation about it and see where it takes you.
That's great. I thank you both for your time. This has been a really good conversation. I think it's just the first of many that we're going to have on AI. So please stay tuned and look out for our next webinar that will probably have more to do with the back of the house and Joe's fantasy trades once he asks Perplexity as opposed to ChatGPT. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks, Jack.